Here in Japan, we've got earthquakes and tsunami, low wages, potential social isolation, and rules, rules, rules. Would I recommend living here in 2025? Recently, there's been what I'd call a lot of negative press about Japan. A lot of people have been saying that it's a fantastic place to visit, but actually a kind of miserable place to live. From fears of earthquakes and tsunami, to the image of few work opportunities, mostly with long hours and poor wages, to the new potential rise of nationalism and Japanese first. There's been a lot of negativity about Japan in my feed recently. Now I'm at the end of my 25th year in Japan. What do I regret? Would I recommend moving here in 2025? Maybe. It depends, of course, on your values and goals. In this video, I'll address the most common issues that people have with living in Japan, some great ways to mitigate them, and how I think you can set yourself up for your best life here in Japan. Initially, the sheer excitement of being in a completely foreign culture, coupled with having bidet toilets everywhere, smoothly functioning mass transit, of course the great vending machines, etc., may sustain you past the hardship of maybe living in a tiny apartment with very thin walls. Later, the joys of bidet toilets may make you insufferable when you visit your home country and can't stop talking about them. Maybe that's just me. Aside from whatever initially drew you here, I think most people come to appreciate the amazing public safety, the high level of food here everywhere, and if you're American, the affordability of the national health care is a dream. And of course, the dramatic festivals held throughout the year. And for me, of course, the proximity, accessibility, and diversity of national parks and wilderness areas all over the country. If you're watching this video, you probably already love Japan, so I don't need to preach to you about what's great here. So let's get into some of those concerns that have been popping up so much in my feed lately. Let's start with the most dramatic, earthquakes and tsunamis. Just last month, a psychic of some sort predicted a huge cataclysmic tsunami that would kill hundreds of thousands and strike most of the Japanese coast. And so many people believed it that it actually put a dent in tourist numbers. Sure, there are earthquakes all the time, and tsunamis are a legitimate concern if you're on the coast. I was living here in 2011 during the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. But I actually learned that the buildings here are so well built that they withstand earthquakes remarkably well. And if anything, after living through the largest earthquake in modern Japanese history, I'm more comfortable with them, not less. I did a bit of research, and the yearly risk of dying in Japan due to some sort of natural disaster like earthquake or tsunami is 0.0002%. You're actually 50 times more likely to die from a shooting in the United States. Little side note here, a lot of the comparisons that I'm using for Japan versus other countries are with the United States because I am from the United States, and it's just easy for me to think about it that way, but I'm sorry if you're from some other country. Anyway, you just learn to take normal precautions for natural disasters in Japan, just like you would for the risks and dangers in your own country. Besides, who wants to make life decisions based in fear? Work hours, work culture, and wages are probably one of the biggest concerns about people considering a long-term move to Japan. According to recent numbers, new university graduates in the United States make 2 to 3 times more money than they do in Japan. Wages have been relatively stagnant over the last few decades here, though recently things have started to increase a little bit. The work culture as well is famous for being seniority rather than merit-based in terms of promotion and whatnot. According to 2024 data, women make 70 to 80% of what men make in Japan during the same work hours. And yes, coming in as a non-Japanese national, you're going to be limited in terms of the types of jobs you can get. And even if your Japanese is quite good, there are a number of industries where you'll be at a serious competitive disadvantage against Japanese nationals. Sounds pretty grim, and it certainly can be for some. There are a lot of ways to avoid the pitfalls of becoming a low-level wage slave or eternal ALT or some other kind of English teacher. Work-related advice is difficult because we're all so different, so there's no way I can really avoid speaking broadly to some degree here. That said, here are some ways that many people I've met have thrived in their careers here in Japan. 1. Start a business. Japan is a great place for the self-employed and small business owner. The paperwork isn't too difficult, The existence of national health care makes it a lot easier than it would be in the States, of course. And you probably have a lot of niche skills, given your background, that will let you shine here. There are a number of incredibly successful foreign-founded businesses here in Japan. Devilcraft in Tokyo started out with 3 American guys, I believe, and 1 Japanese partner, and now they've got a brewery, they've got 4 different restaurants, they're just doing incredibly well. Arigato Japan is now a huge travel agency based in Tokyo, and they are doing incredibly well. And that's run by 2 women, one from the United States and the other from the Philippines originally. Second option is maybe slightly more obvious, and that is to work for a foreign company. There are a number of options of getting much higher paid jobs with better conditions. And you don't have to be in Tokyo. There are foreign-run companies all over Japan. For example, I live right near Hachimantai, which is right in the middle of the national park, and it's got ski resorts everywhere. There's a big international school there called Harrow, and they hire people who are in IT, people doing administration, pastoral work, taking care of the kids' outdoor activities, as well as teachers and things like that. There are plenty of examples of ways you can work for a British, American, etc. foreign company anywhere, well, in a lot of places in Japan. 3, being freelance. You don't actually have to start a company. You could just do freelance work. It's easy tax paperwork, and you can easily have a self-sponsored visa based on your income, just being freelance in any industry and getting a lot of contract work. I've been doing that for most of my 25 years in Japan, actually, though I recently did start a company last year with 3 others. But for more than 20 years, I was basically a freelance worker, just getting gigs and also having, direct business, things like that. And again, with health insurance, things like that, it's not a big deal. And given that you're different, not being Japanese, you've probably got connections abroad. You've got some sort of special perspective or skills that will give you an edge. Or you could also, if you're able to, have work and be hired by clients outside of Japan. There's a lot of ways to do that successfully. And finally, number 4, which is to come over as a business owner or an artisan of some kind, a master of some craft. 2 examples of this. One is that my favorite brewery from Keisenuma on the coast is Black Tide, and they hired a master brewer from the United States, from Portland, Oregon. And he came right over and walked right into that job. And so he didn't have to build up to it. He didn't do any things to work up. He just came in as a master of his craft and has been there for a number of years now and is thriving. That company is doing fantastically well. The other example is the Great Dane, which is one of the oldest craft breweries. Too many beer examples? Sorry. But one of the oldest craft breweries from Madison, Wisconsin. The owner decided that he wanted to move to Japan, and so he moved to Japan and opened a brewery and tap room in Aki Onsen near Sendai. He just came over, they set up his house, his apartment. I don't think he spoke more than a few words of Japanese initially, though I think he's learning now. And he also brought a number of other workers over from Wisconsin. But Japanese language is so hard. Well, it is and it isn't. Sure, being able to handwrite essays or use perfect pitch accent and have ideal honorific language is a pretty high bar. That said, being able to speak conversationally about normal topics and read the types of text you're going to encounter in your daily life really isn't that hard to achieve. Japanese grammar is actually a lot simpler than any Latin-based Romance language, and being able to pronounce it well enough to be clearly understood isn't that hard at all. I think moderate or better fluency in Japanese is absolutely essential for having any kind of a good experience in your life here. And I would argue that if you can afford it or save up the money before you move here, that it's worth going and doing a Japanese language intensive for, say, 3 months, or if you can, 6 months. A lot of people come to Japan thinking that they're going to learn Japanese as they live and work. And yeah, you will, but it's a lot slower and it's a lot more challenging to do that, especially with the written language as well, which I do think is essential. You can avoid having to deal with all this if you just save up and spend 3 to 6 months in a language school first. Either way, if you're going to thrive here, I would argue that knowing Japanese to at least, moderate fluency with some literacy is absolutely essential. Sure, there's a lot of technology, AI and Google Translate, whatever, and that will help you with composing professional emails or texts or things like that when you need it, but you can use them much better if you've got a good foundation in the language anyways. Japanese culture is very community focused, and there is a distinct boundary between insider and outsider. If you're from North America, Europe, or Australia, there's of course going to be some very real culture shock in terms of how friendships work and how people relate to each other. But of course that's going to be true moving to any foreign culture. It's just a little more extreme here. Two things are really important here in mitigating that. One is language, of course, getting through the language barrier. And even if you're not able to communicate completely smoothly or fluently, knowing even very limited Japanese, it shows respect and it shows you're trying, and you will improve with other people, and that makes a huge difference. If you can speak Japanese with at least moderate fluency, it really opens up so many doors, professionally and in terms of personal relationships. The other is your attitude. There are a million ways to make yourself miserable no matter where you live. Here, you could focus on how you feel excluded, maybe how you think people are judging or looking down at you, excluding you. Scanning every interaction for traces of microaggressions, however, is not a recipe for happiness. Of course, you need to put in a lot of effort to reading social cues, following general social mores, watching maybe the volume of your speech, for example, and generally trying to be respectful. But I think basic normal social intelligence, to some degree emotional intelligence, goes a long way here. Recently, a new political party has risen to prominence, the Sanseitou. You may have heard of them. They've been getting a lot of attention in national and international media. And I would be lying if I said they weren't slightly worrying. They're so they started in 2020 with a one-man party initially, and he was promoting conspiracies around the pandemic. He was anti-vaccine, etc. And now they're taking a number of pages from extreme right-wing politics in the United States and Germany, and their new Japanese First campaign proposes things like capping the amount of foreigners that can live in any municipality, banning foreigners from owning property, so they would want to take my house away. Things like even if foreigners take Japanese citizenship, they would not be able to vote for 3 generations. And so it's some kind of hardcore stuff. Hopefully they won't be effective at actually getting any of these things done. That said, I'm in contact with Japanese people on a daily basis. I've been to Tokyo recently, just yesterday in fact, and I don't feel like there's any real change in the atmosphere. Being here, I find people just as lovely and kind and warm and friendly and welcoming as always. I don't think that Japan is suddenly gonna be mean to foreigners because of this political party. I wouldn't worry about that too much. Looking back over my last 25 years living in Japan, I think the only thing I really regret is that I've spent the first 10 years in Tokyo. It's fun to live in Tokyo. You can have a wide social circle. You have friends from all over the world, and there's a lot of opportunities there. But it is miserable, hot, and as a Wisconsinite, I love northern Japan, and I am so happy living up here in Morioka in Iwate Prefecture with national parks all around me and 75% of this prefecture being forested mountains. It's really great, and I wish I would have gotten here sooner. So to sum up, I think living in Japan can be great, but it really is best if you do it on your own terms. And you really need to put in the effort to learn the language. If you can, work for a foreign company or start your own business. No matter where you live, it's going to be a mixed bag. There's going to be things you love and things you're not so crazy about. So find a way to maximize the things you love and, as much as possible, avoid the things you don't. And even if you come here and live here 3-4 years and decide it isn't for you, living in a foreign country like Japan, probably completely different to where you're from, is a fantastic experience, even if you decide that you don't want to do it for the long term. At any rate, I think it's impossible to decide that you want to live in Japan for the long term without trying it out for 2, 3, 4 years first. I hope this video has been useful and given you some food for thought if you're considering coming to Japan. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the trails.